Going to another speaker who is an alumnus of Insead. So Nico works in BCG.
Yeah, we heard it quite some often today, right?
Absolutely. And as we discussed previously, it's great that your color is matched with that of school. So Nico will be talking about corporate venture capital. Just in a moment once we get the right presentation. So Nico, the floor is yours.
And it also works. Hello. So especially for me, it's nice to be back at Insead. It's always a pleasure to be with these great people. And as Katja already said, I have the great honor to have actually two things. First of all, BCG was already named and called quite some often, and also corporate venture capital, I think in the previous calls, was mentioned quite some often. So we'll try to give you a little bit of overview what's going on. And with what I would like to start is actually the topic of disruption, right? Disruption is everywhere. Typical or traditional business models were disrupted. For example, physical video rental like Blockbuster was thrown away by Netflix with a segment of one content creation. Kodak with the analog film was gone through the digital camera. Feature phones and smartphones, offline adverts, personalized online advertisements, and so on. The list is pretty long. But what does it mean actually for the audience and the industries we're in today? Right? These are totally different business models. If we look to some of the most recent events, the Alibaba Singles Day, that actually shows and reveals how crazy disruption is today. Within 24 hours of madness, these people basically generated nearly 31 billion of revenues and sent out 1 billion of express parcels. I mean, this is the dimension companies in fashion, retail, luxury good have to cope with, right? So this is something that is coming up, and this is questioning the business models along the entire value chain. But not only in the I would say larger dimensions, but also in very small dimensions, we do see that disruption is happening today. On the one hand, existing business models of, I would say, incumbents are disruptive, and on the other hand, also new business models are created along the entire value chain. And I just brought a couple of examples. Farfetch, for example, right? A startup that has a luxury online marketplace and tries to remove the friction from discovery of the next authentic designer, right? Places itself in between of different parts of the chain. Birchbox, they offer a personalized sampling service for beauty products. Textile, or as you former know it, Fabstyle, is a subscription-based fashion platform. And Chloe and Isabel, an e-commerce jewelry platform that supports independent people to basically come up with their own brands. And all of these are just examples, but they have one thing in common. They actually show how also this industry here today is affected by an ongoing or an ever-increasing disruption. And it's picking up speed. And I couldn't have found a better quote to show that as from one of the pioneers of the fashion industry, Mickey Dexler, former Cruise and Gap CEO, who basically said that he has never seen the speed of change as it is today with regards to the digital disruption. What does it actually mean? You are all exposed to this digital disruption, and you all should cope with that. But then, okay. So what's the answer? Traditionally, corporates have reacted to innovation in a very traditional way. So either incrementally or disruptive, along processes, products, services, and business models. What companies have done is to rely on the traditional R&D, especially in fashion. I think the in-house R&D in a very cyclical approach was always the way how to go forward, to come up with new, I would say, core and adjacent businesses to incrementally improve the existing products. But that's not enough anymore, and companies have realized that and started to come up with new approaches. M&A, of course, that has been out there forever. Gain access to resources, capabilities, really buy new companies, buy large startups, and really increase your revenue at a point, but it comes also at a price. And then the more, I would say, innovative approaches or innovation vehicles, partnerships, as we already heard with the venturing model of BMW, to get certain startups for a specific topic, a piloting, whatever together, create something with them, but actually have a low cost option, no financial commitment or exposure. Innovation labs. These are like internal groups or people in your company that follow a very agile approach, come up with new ideas on how to digitize, for example, your internal processes. We heard about the accelerators far away with their ideas, a couple of years until they will mature, if ever. And of course, CVC or incubators, so the incubators being very close to the accelerators, and of course, the corporate venture capital. The goal of corporate venture capital, and we already heard that a little bit, is actually to learn about or gain access to disruptive and new opportunities. It's about putting 10 or 20% of a stake into a company in order to have your eyes, your ears, and your hands on the ground in the industry and to understand where the market is moving to. And maybe also to start into some piloting cases if you would combine it with one of these innovation vehicles. And going forward, I would like to give you a little bit more of an overview of corporate venture capital. Also want to acknowledge that we, as BCG, have never seen any companies out there that only rely on just a single of these innovation vehicles, but they always apply multiple of that, and the magic actually lies in the good orchestration of all of these vehicles. So, CVC. Within the last couple of years, CVC has become a widespread tool across companies. So as you can see, within the last 20 years, with some ups and downs in the economic crisis, companies have basically built up to 40%, or up to 40% of these companies have built up a CVC fund. This is based on a study we did among 210 companies. Also innovation labs and accelerators, but CVC is pretty highly rated in there. And companies do try to seek two goals with that, and we also heard that. So on the one hand, they try to learn about or gain access of disruptive or new opportunities. So that's a very strategic approach. Think about where can I put my bets to build up a new business model, where can I try to build something sustainable? Or some people even use this just as a financial VC, so just to look at this as an investment and as returns. So basically like a venture capitalist. Nevertheless, it's not only about having these, or that the companies are building these vehicles. It's also about the impact of the money out in the market. What we have seen in the last couple of years is that the investment have grown significantly. So since 2005, the annual growth of capital investment by CVCs grew more than 20%. By the way, at the same time, VC only with 15%. The ticket sizes have increased tremendously. That means corporates do not even want to invest and play around with my money, but they really want to do a change. By the way, at the same time, VCs only have an average of 17 million. And it's not only about playing around with these startups and try to figure out what they are doing. It's especially also about integrating them into the company, because actually these corporates are interested in merger and acquisition and buying the company afterwards, which shows that the growth in CVC-backed M&A activities has grown by 8%, whereas the global M&A activities only grew by 3% at the same time. Where does it lead to? We can see multiple examples also in the luxury goods, fashion, retail and consumer industry, and I just listed a couple of them. So for example, Fashion for Goods, a CNA foundation, recently invested in We Are Spine Dye that offers a more technically innovative and sustainable color system, like a dye system. More Pacific Ventures invested in Beautylish, that's a social commerce website. LVMH Luxury Ventures invested in Lish, this is basically a global fashion search platform. And L'Oreal invested in Allegra to support brands to build digital online platforms. All of these are just examples, but it actually shows that also in luxury fashion, speed is gaining momentum, or basically activities are gaining momentum. If we look at the financial returns of these CVCs, it's actually highly interesting. More than 95% of them actually positive. I've never believed in that, but actually it's true, because we gathered the data and thought about that. So then, some people, when you look at the title of my presentation, would maybe question or ask, so what's the issue, right? The returns are quite high. The issue is the following. If you're not going for a financial return, and actually that was said in the BMW case too, if you're not going for the financial return, but want to make a difference for your business and want to build something up, corporates still haven't understood how to do that, and corporates still manage to really build an impact in their core business. And this is actually what I've brought to you, a couple of, I would say, best practices we have learned within the last 4 or 5 years in the company and the products we have done with venture capitalists, with corporate venture capital funds, with incubators, and just to give you an overview of what you really have to do to drive your core business forward and to really make an impact with investments with corporate venture capital. First of all, set a clear objective. It couldn't be so easy, right? But unfortunately, companies don't get it right. They don't know whether they want to have financial impact. They don't know whether they want to build new business units. And where it leads to is actually a lot of contradiction in the way they behave, right? If you want to go for financial return, you most likely won't get the venture that's most interesting for your specific business unit. And one company that quite well managed that is 3M, it's a technology player, and have forgotten to tell you that most of the examples are maybe not from your industry, but still these rules apply across all industries. They actively said that their venture capital, corporate venture capital activities are not about financial returns. They use these kind of vehicle to make a change and build up a foundation for a new 3M company. And this is something that's the key when you want to start with these kind of activities. And it continues. The question is also, what do you actually want to look for? What are your search fields? In which kind of industries you want to look for innovations? A lot of companies, and it sounds silly, don't get that right. That leads to investment managers being confused, not committed, searching around without a clear plan. And that should never happen, because these people should know where they should go to. One company that does this quite well is, for example, Henkel Ventures, that defined 14 search fields. It's now just a selection of them, but very concrete, specific search fields where they can send the investment managers to and let them search for startups, have a look what's going on, get a feeling how the technology is evolving, how the business models are evolving. For example, new materials, ingredients, IoT and smart packaging. They have dedicated investment managers. They're just seeking exactly startups in this area. Another topic, and this is most likely one of the keys for all of these units, is you should select a leader from the outside. Corporates often make the mistake that they think they have the in-house capabilities and expertise. This is not true, because if you build such a CVC unit, you have to take the best out of two worlds. On the one hand, the technical and industry experience and understanding from your corporate, and on the other hand, you also have to take the understanding about VCs, about investment startups, people who have an own, I would say, ecosystem ready to begin working with. You don't build that from scratch and be still competitive in the market. I think the most quoted example for that is actually GE Ventures. Also, GE is not quite popular in the media, but what they did back in the times is they announced Sue Siegel, which was a former partner at the venture capitalist board David of Ventures in Silicon Valley, to lead their global corporate venture capital activities, which we think was a very great move because she basically combined both understanding of the corporate and understanding of the VC world. Another good topic, hire the right mix of talent. It's an illusion that you can basically get all these capabilities and expertise you need in order to succeed just from your internal company. Because, as I said before, you also need to have the people who understand how to manage a deal funnel. You need to have the people who understand how to interact, how to think like a startup. So companies that perform very well in these kind of topics always try to have a good mix. Unilever Ventures, for example, tries to maintain a 50-50 mix out of internal people from business units who still hold a strong, I would say, tie and can still interact with the business, and corporate VCs, finances, and former consultants that not only know how to make beautiful charts and slides, but also how to address the market in an industry. ensure independence. One of the biggest mistakes we do see out there is actually if you build up such a unit, you want to be innovative, you want to work with startups, and then you pull these people into your corporate headquarters and they just get overwhelmed by processes and regulations, and latest after one day they want to leave this house. 10 minutes. Okay, I need to speed up. Good. Maybe one last important point on that. Foster collaboration with the business units. We heard that earlier with the venturing model. What a lot of companies always don't get is they invest in companies, they have these kind of stakes, and the startups are out there waiting to do something, but actually nobody in the corporate is anyhow interested in these companies because they don't want it, they don't understand it, and sometimes even just competition for them. So what you should do is bring these kind of business units to the table as early as possible. Get them into the investment decision, get them into the decision about where you want to actually look for startups. Samsung is like a forerunner on that. What they do, they let even the business units decide on what kind of search fields you want to look for. And what the CVC unit then does is to bring them to the table on a quite regular basis by exhibition fairs, by town hall meetings, just to interact with the startups and the business units. Maybe that's a good one too. Lean agile decision making. Of course, startups hate processes and startup hate regulations. So long story short, keep them out, make it lean and easy. And very important on top is to have a good governance. It's on the one hand, what I already said with the business units, but on the other hand, also try to get one of the C-level executives into these kind of activities. Because any kind of barrier, any kind of borders, any kind of pitfalls, the CEO can solve that in their own company. Nobody else can. So this is, for example, why Bosch, the CEO of Bosch, Volkmar Denner, is sponsoring a lot of the venture capitalist activities, incubation activities, accelerate activities. He's always in there, he sits in the board, and he always drives these things forward, and he can basically crack barriers and resistance. And last but not least, consistent financing is always is a good thing, but actually what happened back in the financial downturns was a couple of times that the CFO or the finance department basically withdraw the support and the budget for these kind of units, which led to the problem that you couldn't go for follow-up investments and that you actually lost your talent, internal talent, because they wanted to spend money and they weren't allowed to. And we heard already this example of Next 47, but that's actually true and was a milestone in the corporate venture capital. They consolidated all their activities and basically claimed that they will spend 1.1 billion euros or dollar within the next 4 or 5 years. We have never seen such a size except for some Chinese players like Tencent or Huawei who are firing out the money like hell. So long story short, and to wrap everything up, I think also for fashion and luxury goods right now, it's the time to act. Why? The digital transformation drives your industry. New entrants do disrupt the existing business models, and actually new business models arise along the entire value chain. There's only one good thing, which is, for example, not the case for cars where Tesla is disrupting everything or autonomous driving would change everything. You still have a nice product, and that will be key in the future, because innovation today happens outside your core business. It's a nice add-on and an enabler. Still, you want to have, or the consumers want to have the brand experience, so nobody wants to buy a shitty car or a shitty Porsche that doesn't make the Porsche sound. And in the end, the offline experience of buying a nice and expensive bag is still more important than buying it online on Amazon, which I think is a good thing for your industry. So what do you need to take as an action right now? Select the right innovation vehicle. Think about how to digitize your core business. For example, build your own digital marketplace and don't get dependent on an Amazon and anyone else. And then expand your presence along the value chain. That's it. Thank you very much. Any questions? Sorry. Any questions on that?
Yes, thank you, Nico. Are there any questions in the floor? As there are no questions, so this is our wonderful gift for you from Insead. Thank you for coming from Munich. The last presentation and the final one will be a panel discussion about corporate and startup co-creation. And I would like to invite on the floor Peter Lamens, Céline Lippi, and Kunal Kapoor. So you will have these microphones, and please have your seats.